This is your daily dose of all things royal. As you all have probably heard about Prince Harry's latest courtroom disaster, the Court of Appeal today, in a delightfully dismissive ruling, told the Duke of Wine to take a backseat. His desperate bid to claw back automatic taxpayer-funded security for his rare UK jaunts was shot down by 3 justices who clearly had better things to do. The justices today, barely hiding their boredom, admitted Harry's lawyers had spun a powerful and moving sob story about Harry's precious safety, but it didn't actually translate to a legal argument. The court upheld the 2020 decision to downgrade Harry's protection to a bespoke setup, meaning he gets security on a case-by-case basis. In my opinion, Harry's lucky to get anything at all after all that he has done over the past 5 years. And what's so pathetic is that Harry had the BBC on hand to do a sit-down immediately after this verdict, so he could cry and complain some more about how unfair he and his bitch wife have been treated. This guy is such a piece of work. He really does see himself, as he will go into in this interview, as some type of messiah, someone who was born above everybody else and should be entitled to the security. I want to go through some of it and point out how Harry is being very manipulative.
Pretty gutted about the decision. We thought it was going to go our way, but it certainly has proven that there was no way to win this through the courts. Wish someone had told me that beforehand.
Look, I'm pretty sure that Harry was warned not to proceed further with this appeal, but he didn't want to listen. It's nobody's fault but his, and I'm pretty sure the witch woman was in Harry's ear saying, "But you promised to keep me safe, H."
The decision has been a surprise as well as not a surprise. For the time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely.
Nobody feels sorry for you, Harry, because we know if you wanted to go back to the UK with your kids, all you needed to do was just give 28 days notice so they could do the risk assessment that you keep complaining about that you're not getting.
You're obviously very deeply affected by this. What memories, experiences had you hoped your children, Archie and Lilibet, would have had that you think they won't be able to now with this decision?
Manipulation tactic number 1. Start off pulling on the heartstrings of the audience by talking about the kids and depriving them of getting to know their family.
Well, for a start, the only time that I've come back to the UK is sadly for funerals or court cases.
Nope. Harry, do not sit there and pretend like you came back to the UK sparingly. You were there for the Jubilee, you were there for the coronation, and you chose not to bring those 2 invisible children. Those were 2 events that Harry and Meghan deprived their children of being a part of. Not because they didn't have security, because we do know that they would have been provided the top-tier security because you would have been with top-tier royalty. So don't pull this jazz about how the kids couldn't go back because it wasn't safe.
With the odd charitable function where I can in between that. I put myself at risk for that, but I will continue on with a life of public service, so I will always support the charities and the people that mean so much to me. I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point.
Come on, Harry, we know that this is a convenient excuse. Meghan is never going to step foot on UK soil ever again.
And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done. Despite what some people in that country have done.
You see, if Harry really loved his country, he wouldn't have made the last couple years that the Queen had on this earth miserable. If Harry loved his country, he wouldn't have called the whole entire country racist or accused them of racism. You know, Harry, it's getting tiring. It really is. You love your country and you'll always serve your country is bullshit.
So, you know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK. Of course I do.
Wait a minute. Didn't Harry once say that he had tremendous anxiety when he would fly over London?
And I think it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show, you know, my children my homeland.
What about the security arrangements that were in place made you feel it would be unsafe for you and your family?
There's only so much that I can say because of the redaction process and the national security matters at hand, but
The fact that he can't talk about it because of national security matters goes to show you that there is a higher level of security in place for him and his family. So all of this is just nonsense.
Because in 2020, beginning of 2020, I was scored the highest as far as risk was concerned. And then overnight, I was reduced to the lowest without actually going through the risk management board. So one does question how that is even possible, and also the motive behind that at the time. And that was in 2020. And as hard as it is to appreciate or understand why the decision was made the way that it was in 2020.
So let's just stop here for a second, because Harry is being manipulative. Again, he is being very selective in what he is disclosing here, thinking that everybody has forgotten. Well, maybe many people don't know, but at the time, per the court case in the documents, the proper authorities could not do this risk assessment because they were not given Harry and Meghan's plans. So the actual fault is really on Harry because they weren't transparent in the beginning. And I wonder who Harry keeps looking at as he's doing this interview.
The fact that I still haven't had a risk management board assessment done for me over the last 5 years.
Manipulation tactic number 3, Harry is saying that he never had any type of assessment done for him, which is a lie. Every time Harry goes over to the UK, he notifies the Home Office 28 days before, and they go ahead and begin looking and surveilling what Harry's risks are. So he can't say that.
Everybody else within this group of people get it at the minimum once a year. So again, I would not have taken this far.
That might very well be the case. But here's the thing, Harry, you don't live in the UK. These other people do. You know, this guy has had more than enough opportunity to show that he was making an effort and wanting his children to get to know his country and his family. But he chose to pass on all of it, not because he was truly afraid. It's because he was selfish.
And I'm sitting here today talking to you where, you know, we've lost the appeal, but the other side have won in keeping me unsafe.
You know, I really don't think Harry understands the difference between facts and feelings. I'm sorry you feel that way, Harry, that the decision was made because they didn't want you to be safe. Like, that's the most ridiculous thing. But here he is trying to pull on heartstrings to show you how cold and callous the palace is. It's not working, Harry. It really isn't.
And to now know today, based on this judgment, that there was no legal framework that constrains the decisions of this body, RAVEC, of which the royal household sit on. And I didn't know that until this legal process in 2021. One of the first things my lawyer said to me was, as disclosure started, or as this process started, she turned around and said, "Did you know that the royal household sat on RAVEC?"
Well, then maybe, Harry, you should blame Fiona, the person that was dealing with this for you. She conveyed all the details. She probably told you all of this, but you didn't listen.
And my jaw hit the floor.
Well, I want to ask you about that because the King's private secretary sits on RAVEC now.
Sir Clive Alderton, yeah.
Do you wish
And another person as well, but yes.
Do you wish your father had intervened, despite how that may have looked?
I've never asked him to intervene. I've asked him to step out of the way and let the experts do their job. This RAVEC committee is an expert committee full of professionals, plus the royal household. And the royal household don't have any role in that, on the RAVEC committee, other than the helping influence the decisions based on members of the royal family. And 5 years later, every single visit that I do back to the UK has to go through the royal household. My representative on the RAVEC committee, still to this day, is the royal household.
I mean, Harry's not completely cut off from the royal household. He still has contact with them. As you can see here, he's admitting that he still has a representative. I'm willing to bet that Harry has more than one representative.
What I know throughout this legal process is the interference that was created came from the royal household. And the RAVEC chair at the time, who I believe I can talk about because he's no longer there, Sir Richard Mottram, the first thing he did well, the first people that he went to go and see was the royal household at the palace.
Yo, Harry is such a jerk, man. He's throwing this guy Richard Mottram under the bus when all he did was try to help them. Going back to the court case and the decision that was made in February of last year, as you can see, it says here, Sir Richard's initial thoughts were that it was difficult to reach a clear view on future security arrangements unless there were more clarity about the future roles of the principals, meaning Harry and Meghan. That being the expression used in regards to those within the Ravik cohort and how they intended to divide their time. The problem was, as I said earlier before, Harry and Meghan didn't share their plans with Sir Richard or whoever that Fiona was talking to. So maybe Harry should start blaming his own people that was handling this for him.
So whether it's the media or whether it's anybody else that claims that the royal household and my father and my family don't have any decision-making capabilities on Ravik, well, then what's their role? They're not experts. What's their role on that?
There should be representation because the whole point of getting taxpayer-funded security is because the royals are working for the people.
And Sir Richard Mottram emailed back in January of 2020 that an RMB would be necessary before taking my security away.
Boy, recollections do vary. As it says here, following the receipt of that email, which was an email with Fiona McElwim, Sir Mark Sedwill spoke by telephone to Sir Richard Mottram, who then emailed blank. In the email, Sir Richard referred to the telephone conversation with Mark, who said he had detailed conversations with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and others in the royal household, including Edward Young, about their future status and the implications for their future security arrangements. That future status was still being finalized. Remember, Harry and Meghan were not sharing that they were going to end up in the United States. What followed in the email was said to be on the assumption that the couple would essentially become private citizens and would spend much of the year in Canada. Sir Mark Sedwill had told them that they should have no expectations that the present security arrangements in Great Britain would continue. Of course, why would it? They weren't going to be there. Ravik would wish to review what was appropriate. Ravik would address any need to mitigate risks of blank, but not provision because they were celebrities and faced intrusive interest from the public or the press.
What the court decided today was that they were justified for 4 reasons to not have that review. And a major part of that is because you're no longer a working royal, a change in your status. Do you not accept that from the court?
Well, my status hasn't changed. It can't change. I am who I am. I am part of what I'm part of, and I can never escape that.
So essentially what Harry is saying is now backtracking what he said on Oprah, being trapped.
Please explain how you, Prince Harry, raised in a palace, in a life of privilege, literally a prince, how you were trapped.
Trapped within the system, like the rest of my family are. My father and my brother, they are trapped. They don't get to leave.
I am part of what I'm part of, and I can never escape that. My circumstances will always be the same. There are comparisons that exist, and again, I have to be careful what I say, but I think it would be quite shocking for the British public and the public at large to understand or know that, in fact, many people do know this, that people who leave public office receive lifetime protection.
Again, the people that have served office most likely are still living in the UK. You're not, Harry. And the fact that he is elevating himself to some type of politician who also deserves this same type of treatment is bonkers to me. His arrogance literally has no bounds.
So for me, with a whole list of risks and threats that were known about in 2020 and that have only increased over time, including the Al-Qaeda threat that was published and talked about recently,
it's truly breathtaking to see how Harry assumes no accountability for the rise in these so-called threats he's perceiving. Harry, you are the one responsible and brought it upon yourself for publishing that information in that book. And then on top of it, go ahead and stage a fake car chase in New York City? Are you stupid? Wait, I shouldn't even ask that question because we already know what the answer is.
completely disregarded, thrown away, ignored, because for me, security was made conditional on having that official role.
Like everybody else in the family, Harry, you're not that special.
That role that everybody knows, that myself and my wife wish to carry on.
No, Harry, you and your bitch wife wanted a lesser role so you could go off, make your money, exploiting your status of being royal. Let's be real. This is what you've been doing the past 5 years. And you wanted to do it on the taxpayer dime, just as you've been doing here.
But was stopped from being able to do that back in 2020.
What do you say to those who ask, why should the taxpayer pay for your police security if you have your own private security? Where are the gaps there? What's your response to those who say you're getting police protection on a case-by-case basis?
I tell you what, why don't you ask that question again, but in 3 parts, if you could? Because you just put 3 very, very important questions together.
Sure.
And I cannot possibly answer all 3 of them at the same time.
Sure.
I don't know about you, but that was a bit condescending. Harry, you could have at least said please, or you could have clarified the questions. But to sound so demeaning and looking down on this journalist who's asking questions that you, my friend, most likely provided, I think is quite rude.
What do you say to those who ask why the UK taxpayer should pay for police security? You have your own private security.
Well, first off, private security can only do so much. Again, I can't go into the details of that, but I think most people will be able to work that out.
So in the UK, private security can't carry guns. So that's the reason why you're fighting it? No, it's really about the intelligence. Harry wanted the intelligence because how often does Harry go back to the UK? And when he goes back to the UK, he gets provided by the special police who are carrying guns. So Harry, what's your point here?
One of the major things is they don't have jurisdiction in a foreign country or in any country. They don't have any jurisdiction.
So 2 things that I want to point out here that I think are really important. Whether Harry realizes it or not, he just gave himself away to let the world know that this wasn't just about getting the security back so he can go visit in the UK. This was to cover him to go anywhere in the world. Now, we always knew that, but here is the actual admission. Why would you say, well, you know, private security doesn't have jurisdiction in a foreign country or other countries? You would just say, because I want to go to the UK, well, my private security doesn't have jurisdiction in the United Kingdom, if indeed the UK was the only place that you were looking to get your full security back. So now he's openly admitted that. But then also, when you're talking about jurisdiction, not only is it about the guns, but also to be able to arrest people. And that extends to people online. With the new law that's going into effect in the UK for online harms, you can bet half of this Megxit community probably would be in jail.
Police protection is effective protection, which is what my grandmother made very clear that we needed.
She did mention that in 2020, but she didn't know how you were going to be such a traitor to king and country.
With regard to the taxpayer part of it, I don't need to go into detail how much the royal family costs or how much protection costs or whatever. What I will say is that some of the British tabloid press did a very good job in campaigning to have our security removed by quoting figures such as £20 million. Right, and through this disclosure process, I've seen constituents in the UK write to their MP saying, I don't want to, as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay for Meghan and Harry's security at this cost. They're literally quoting headlines from British newspapers.
Yo, millionaire Harry, you're not getting it. Whether it be £20 million or £5, the UK taxpayer and the US taxpayer don't want a dime of their hard-earned money going to your security. It's completely irrelevant if the figures are wrong. It's the principle of it.
Those figures are obviously grossly exaggerated by about 18, 19 times. And further to that, if you know that other people are being protected, people that have made a choice for public office, then why wouldn't you be comfortable, happy with someone in my position who's given 35 years service to his country? So
this is the arrogance that I was telling you about earlier of him feeling superior than everybody else. Here's the thing, Harry. You were not voted in office into anything. You're not a politician. So the fact that you are expecting the same level of treatment to anyone who served a political office, to me, is astounding. The thing is, Harry, you are dangerous with any type of access to intelligence. And the fact that you feel that it's owed you because you served 35 years as being a royal, well, what about all the military veterans who've served their country? Should they get security too? Because essentially, that's what you're implying here, in the sense, because you served your country. Well, there's a lot of people that served the UK.
2 tours of Afghanistan. And the threats and risks to my life, I was born into this position. I was born into those risks, and they've only increased over time, along with my marriage to Meghan.
Well, maybe there's your problem, Harry, because all of this drama had started because of her. You didn't see it, but Meghan made you see it. We all know that the calls are coming from inside the house.
Probably what people don't know, but that is mentioned in the judgment today, Ravek protect private citizens. You know, I was made a private citizen by the royal household, not by Ravek, by the royal household.
So whatever happened to just call me Harry and stepping away from all the flashing lights and cameras?
I can't be a private citizen. I will never be seen as a private citizen. I will never be treated as a private citizen.
Yes, you can, Harry. Nobody gives a shit about you here in the United States. You can live a private life. It's just you and your thirsty wife are so hungry for fame that you're constantly putting yourself out there. That's not anybody's fault. That's totally on you and the witch that you married.
So, you know, I think once people realize or understand that there are private citizens who have never played any role in public office and never will play any public role, that because they are high risk, they are protected at taxpayers' expense, and rightly so.
You see, here's the difference between those folks and Prince Harry. Those folks probably are being protected, whether it be under some type of witness protection, the Virginia Giuffres of the world, and then you have the millionaire who can pay for his own security. You don't see Beyonce or Taylor Swift crying that they don't have taxpayer-funded security. All I see here is a petulant man-child sulking because he was told no.
But it comes down to impact, and it comes down to the reputational impact of the UK if that person or those people are injured on UK soil. But apparently for me, that doesn't matter.
This is why the United States needs to kick this guy out, because we obviously are paying for his security because we don't want that situation here on our land. And I think America needs to wake up to understand that this guy has been one ungrateful bastard that is trying to take advantage of the system. Here, he's sulking because, oh, nobody cares about me. Nobody cares about my safety. No, we don't, Harry, because you can afford your own security. So fuck off.
This case-by-case basis has been used by Ravek and also by large sections of the British press to say, well, what's the big problem? You're given something on a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, that case-by-case basis is separated by the reason for my visit.
Well, yeah, Harry, you can't just pop over to the UK to go see friends and expect the Met Police to come out in full force to take you around. Like, that's just a waste. They're not there to be at your beck and call. And that's exactly what this guy is expecting.
It's not really a case-by-case basis. It's an either or. If you're invited to the UK by your family, then we will give you security. If you come for any other reason, then you will get a very low amount of security. I'm not going to confirm what that is, but it is completely insufficient.
At this point, Harry's lucky to get anything, so to scoff at even the little bit of security that he's getting is pretty arrogant.
Somewhere along the line, people have talked about the fact that it really, all it is someone on the end of a phone.
Do you see how manipulative he's being? At first, no, I can't talk about the security because of national security protocol. But here now he's just dropping this little fact that, oh, yeah, it could be getting somebody at the end of a phone. You're just now upping your vulnerability, Harry, on purpose.
So, you know, no matter how much private security I have around me, there's only so much that I can do and operate and function within the UK when it comes to supporting my charities, visiting my friends, all of these things.
And there it is, folks. There is the true purpose for Harry getting his security back. It has nothing to do with his children or his bitch wife going over there and being safe. Because if it was, that would be the first thing that would roll off his tongue. Instead, he's like, my charity, my friends. Guy has no intention or cares to bring those children over to the UK. He just wants this security back because he wants his status back so he can feel important. And he wants access to the intelligence on people so he can have them arrested.
So, I've been treated very, very, very differently to everybody else that exists. All examples that exist, past, present, I have been singled out.
Woe is me, poor Harry, I'm a victim.
You've spoken very openly about the fact that you think you've been punished for leaving the monarchy. Who specifically do you think is trying to punish you?
I don't think that anymore. Now I know that it was, security was used as leverage. And I think what really worries me more than anything else about today's decision, depending on what happens next, is that it's set a new precedent that security can be used to control members of the family.
Wow, Meghan has taught Harry well. You see how manipulative he was just now? The way that I read this, and this is just after studying these two for so long, is that they frame their narratives in such a way that is so dirty. Here we have Harry, and I will bet you that he is referencing the three children that he is most likely jealous of: Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Here he is saying, well, this is just going to set a precedence because down the road, essentially saying that if anybody else wants to leave the institution, they can't really go because this will be hung over their heads, taking away their security and jeopardizing their lives. Like, Harry is a dirty player. Make no mistake about it, he is dirty.
And effectively what it does is imprison other members of the family from being able to, choose a different life. If for me, security is conditional on having an official role, one that both myself and my wife wished to carry on, but then was rejected, not by Ravek, was rejected by the royal household.
You see, the problem with these one-sided interviews that Meghan and Harry always do is that they never have anybody challenging them on some of the things that they're saying. They're just given a list of questions for them to ask, and that's it. In this situation, if this was a real journalist, they would have probed and challenged Harry by asking, what about Princess Eugenie? What about Beatrice? They live a fairly quiet life. They don't have any problems, because they don't have this 24/7 security. Like, the case that Harry is making here is very weak.
And the result to that is you lose your security. That basically says that you can't live outside of their control if you want to be safe.
Harry, be careful what you ask for, because look what happened to JFK and what we've been finding out as to who was responsible for his death. In my opinion, the real threat that Harry has is the one that he's sleeping with.
I'm not sure how much I can say, but I can never leave the royal family. Yeah, that is my family. That is my larger family.
Well, if you can't leave your family, then perhaps maybe the family should leave you. I think it's a very simple solution to go ahead and remove you from the line of succession, as well as the offspring that you allegedly have in your possession, and alleviate this burden that you have been living. I think right now they're at this point where, this couple have done so much damage and harm to the royal family that perhaps maybe they're just not a right fit. And maybe Harry just needs to accept the fact that he is now in California and needs to start his own legacy or what have you. But take all of this other stuff away, because clearly it pains him. And now it's going to cause even more anxiety that he doesn't have the security. Remove all of the bells and whistles that come with your title so you can go on and live as Mr. and Mrs. Markle-Windsor. How does that sound?
I left the institution because at the end of the day I had to. I didn't leave it in 2020. I left it in 2021.
Oh boy. Looks like Harry just stuck his foot in his mouth. We just heard him openly admit that he didn't leave the institution in 2020. He left it in 2021, which would mean that in 2020, when he was interfering with our election, he was working for the crown. Oh boy.
but security was removed in 2020.
Speaking of your family, your father is ill with cancer. Will you continue to visit him alone without the family? Where does this leave things moving forward, the ability of your children to see their grandfather?
Life is a precious thing, and I'm acutely aware of the fragility of that.
No, you're not, Harry. Remember, the Queen asked to see you 2 days before she passed away, and you turned her down. You knew she was sick, and you couldn't make the time to go see her. And due to you and your wife's selfishness, deprived family members from getting a chance to give their final goodbyes. So I don't even think you understand what fragility of life means.
I can only come to the UK safely if I'm invited.
Unfortunately for Harry, we know that that's never going to happen as long as his wife is around. Now, I can see the family inviting just Harry, but of course, he's not going to have any of it unless Meghan is there. So, fat chance Harry ever getting an invite ever again. And I think he's at a point where he knows that.
There is a lot of control and ability in my father's hands. Ultimately, this whole thing could be resolved through him.
So essentially, he's now asking his father to step in to tell them to do an R&B. So even though earlier he stated that he wanted the process to play out, well, the process did play out, Harry. And just because you don't like the outcome doesn't mean now you get to ask Daddy to say, make them do this and make them do that. I honestly believe that he thought that just because he is Prince Harry, the son of the king, they were going to go ahead and rule in his favor. So he could walk away and say, look, I am the dragon slayer. But because that didn't happen, he's now pissed off that his father didn't step in and say, you know what, I am the king and what I say goes, so do it. Harry, it doesn't work like that.
Not necessarily by intervening, but by stepping aside, allowing the experts to do what is necessary and to carry out an RMB. That said, this all was initiated under a previous government. And there is now a new government. I have had it described to me, once people knew about the facts, that this is an good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up.
Now, I'll be honest with you, had they ruled in Harry's favor, then I think people would say that it was a good old-fashioned stitch-up. But I think the judge did the right thing.
And that's what it feels like.
So should Keir Starmer step in?
I think that, based on the judgment that the court has put out today, it clearly states that RAVEC aren't constrained by law. If they're not constrained by law, then this decision was made by the royal prerogative, which means that on national security matters, my case, which the other side have used national security exclusions and excuses to withhold certain information from me, restrict me from being able to speak about certain things to the public.
And this is what makes Harry so manipulative, because that information that they are restricting him from talking about is about other very, very important people that the government's protecting. So they don't want to disclose certain pieces of information because it does jeopardize their security and safety. So this asshole is pissed off that he didn't get this information to make his case so he could win back his security, not really taking into consideration that he would be jeopardizing other people by disclosing this information.
That this national security matter is not bound by any law, and that RAVEC can abandon the very processes, the very expert processes that exist to protect individuals and the people around them, as well as the decision makers themselves, from liability if anything should happen.
Well, of course, he can't see or understand that. But flip the tables around and let's say it was Harry's information that was being given to somebody. I think he would be a little pissed off that his information on his security details was disclosed. So I think he doesn't have a good argument here.
So, I would ask the Prime Minister to step in. I would ask Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, to look at this very, very carefully, and I would ask her to review RAVEC.
Oh, you know that Meghan is crafting all these emails to Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer to pester them. Harry is definitely going to pursue this, and he most likely will go the route of bothering Keir Starmer, because we all know that Keir Starmer doesn't like the institution or the royal family. So who knows? Harry may try to sabotage the king's rule and try to take down the institution anyhow, because if he can't get his security back and he can't be a part of it, and the same thing with Meghan with this mindset is burn it down. And just knowing how malicious and vindictive these two are, there's no doubt that they will retaliate. They will retaliate, and it's going to be bad. Now they have really nothing to lose.
Do you want the court battle to continue? Do you want to try to see this get to the Supreme Court?
I don't want any battles to continue. There is way too much suffering and way too much conflict in the world. Myself, my wife, and our kids are happier outside of the institution. Then please just look at the facts. Look at the risks, look at the threat, look at the impact that if anything was to happen to me, my wife, or my father's grandchildren, if anything was to happen to them, look where the responsibility lies.
I don't know, folks. That sounded to me like Harry is doing some foreshadowing. Who wants to bet that Harry and Meghan will concoct some type of fake kidnapping or some type of bomb threat? It's coming, folks. Don't dismiss it. We saw what happened with the New York car chase. If they could do that, believe me, they would go to that extreme just to prove a point. Harry is so pissed off by this ruling, he honestly believes that this security is entitled to him just because he was born into this family. And what he goes on to say next goes to show that it was never about being treated fairly, because what he slips and he says, it totally throws his argument out the window of him just being treated fairly and being given this risk assessment. Take a listen.
And you reject that it has nothing to do with the fact that you're no longer a working royal.
Whether I have an official role or not is irrelevant to the security needs that I would need. The security needs that I would need. Let me rephrase that. Right. Whether I have an official role or not is irrelevant to the threats, risks, and impact.
So essentially what Harry is saying is that he is so special, more special than the richest man on earth, like Elon Musk, that he deserves to have this security provided to him just because he was born into this family. Do you see how insane this guy sounds? Let's use Elon Musk as a good example as to why Harry needs to shut the F up. On a daily basis, we have witnessed people calling for the death of Elon Musk. They're also vandalizing his property, meaning the dealerships, as well as burning Tesla cars. Do you think Harry and Meghan face anywhere near the level of threats that Elon Musk faces? I don't think so. But you don't hear Elon Musk screaming, "Oh, I deserve taxpayer-funded security." I mean, his threat level is out the roof. He deserves taxpayer-funded security for what he's going through. But this guy, what a joke.
So for me, having an official role was conditional on keeping security. But for everybody else, people who have chosen this life to enter into public office and then leave, get it for life.
So Harry, if you're so hell-bent on serving your country and getting protection, why don't you run for office? There should be nothing stopping you since you have left the institution. You should be free to do whatever you want, right? Give up your titles and be a regular citizen. Run for office so you can then secure your security for the rest of your life. It's that simple.
Regardless of whether they have risk or threat to their name. And by the way, I agree with that. I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. That if you come in and you serve your country, even if it's a minimum of 4 years, that you get the protection that you require because of your public service.
You know, if we go by this logic, then you're setting a precedence to then open up to be giving this kind of service to anybody who has served for the UK, like the military. So are we saying that you're going to want to give the same type of security to them? I mean, there's barely any resources as is to give to you, Harry. Like, you are not that special.
I was born into this position. It wasn't a choice. I've served my country for 35 years. I believe that I am still continuing to serve my country. Public service is my life.
No, Harry, you are not. You are a disgrace to the UK. And the things that you've been doing here in the US are slowly catching up to you. It's taking some time, but it's happening. And the fact that you could say that you have been serving them, which means that you have been supporting and trying to drive the initiative to censor Americans, which is something very serious. Very serious. Many Americans see this guy as an enemy and he needs to go.
But to turn around and say, well, because you don't have an official role, your life doesn't actually matter anymore. Well, you can imagine how I feel about that, but you can also imagine, not even imagine, that is the most illogical argument in the history of arguments.
I didn't think this couple could be any more insufferable, but here we are. At the beginning of the week, we had Meghan moaning and complaining with Jamie Kern-Lehman. Then we have Harry finishing off the week moaning and complaining with the BBC about his stupid security. Here's the thing, Harry, America doesn't care. So what? You didn't get your way. Get used to it. Life is not fair. I know that I went through this with a fine-tooth comb, but it was necessary because this guy needs to be called out. But did I miss anything? Definitely leave your thoughts below. I'd love to know what you think on today's verdict. For me, I think, we dodged a bullet because these two would have been very dangerous had they been given an inch to get their foot back in the door to get the security back. And I'm glad that they put a stop to it. But definitely let me know your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.